if this is the level of insanity in Canada, is that they're renaming streets that are unnameable streets, and what impact this might have for public health, emergencies, logistics, mail delivery, whatever. This is the absolute state of Canada. The land acknowledgement things we've been seeing all over the place. The King Charles came and gave a land acknowledgement. The Nova Scotia police chief, before talking about 2 missing children, gives a land acknowledgement. Looks like she's being held at gunpoint. When did this become something of official government policy? Because it is something that we find as official or, almost quasi-official government policy to give these land acknowledgements.
Well, I assume that in some cases, maybe there's a municipality that has incorporated it into the bylaws, and maybe there's a bylaw that says every city council meeting shall be commenced with a land acknowledgement. That might be the case in some cases, but in other situations, it's just something that, the powers that be, the people that are now in office, have just decided to start doing it. And the problem is that it's hypocritical virtue signaling by people who would never, ever give away their own home or their own land to an Aboriginal for free. And so it's very hypocritical, because there's sort of this suggestion that somehow it's stolen land, and everybody who is not Aboriginal, which is, 90-something% of Canadians who are African, Asian, Caucasian, what have you, somehow we should all feel guilty about the stolen land. And yet the proponents of these Aboriginal land acknowledgements, you'll never see one of them giving away their own house to an Aboriginal for free. So that's just one problem. The other one is it does nothing to help the Aboriginals on reserves, who are facing high rates of unemployment, poverty, family violence, alcoholism, drug addiction, drug overdoses, often very corrupt local governments that are tyrannical. And the land acknowledgements do nothing to help Aboriginals on reserves. And then there's this whole thing about imposing it as part of a school board meeting, city council meeting, high school graduation ceremony. It's not appropriate to impose something divisive and political on an entire group of people at a meeting. We don't put up with it for a prayer. We say, look, we got different beliefs. We're not going to recite the Our Father before a city council meeting. And yet, with these political land acknowledgements, some people think we should just all, put up with that.
Let me play this before we get into the story of the woman you're representing here. This is one such example. This was a press conference for 2 missing children. And now, from what I understand of that investigation, it may or may not be focused on the children having gone missing through accident. We'll see where it goes. But they haven't found the 2 missing children yet in Nova Scotia. But when they give an update, the police chief, constable, whatever this woman is, says this is how they have to start the press conference. Like someone gives her the message, it's on her phone.
Good afternoon.
She looks like she's being held hostage.
I am Corporal Carly McCann, Provincial Public Information Officer for the Nova Scotia RCMP. Thank you all for being here today. Bonjour, je suis la Caporale Carly McCann, agent d'information publique pour la GRC en Nouvelle-Écosse. Merci de votre présence aujourd'hui. First, I acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I also recognize that African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched that part of Mi'kma'ki known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years.
I'm just gonna take that out now. Unseated. Oh, you could leave your camera up when that's on, John. Okay. Unseated, by the way, it doesn't mean unseated. It means unseated, CEDED, as in they never gave it up. So you have a white person, the fact that she's a woman is neither here nor there, acknowledging we're on stolen land. We acknowledge we're on stolen land. We're not doing a damn thing to give it back to you. And we'd like to thank African Nova Scotians as a distinct people. This is possibly the most racist thing I've ever heard in my life. But the story that you're getting involved with now is that it was a woman at Terry Newman objected to land acknowledgements. Now she's paying the price for her heresy. This is the case that you're involved with right now, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, tell the world, tell America, who might be watching this saying, "Holy crab apples, this is batshit insane. What's going on here? What happened, and what she's doing to avail herself of her God-given rights."
So Catherine Cronus is a mom in the Canadian province of Ontario, and she's elected She was elected to her parent council, recently re-elected, in fact, and the meeting was held by Zoom. And she spoke up and she said that Aboriginal land acknowledgements were political, controversial, inappropriate, divisive, and that she objected to the Aboriginal land acknowledgement being read out. And she asked that her objection be noted in the minutes. And that was it. So this is not somebody who, disrupted a meeting and screamed and shouted and this and that. She very politely. A month later, in May, she gets a letter from the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, which is the local school board for that part of Ontario where she lives, and saying you're henceforth banned from attending parent council meetings because of your inappropriate behavior. And this is another, so many side issues here that we see the weaponization of codes of conduct, where if you say something that is politically incorrect or that the woke people don't like, they accuse you of misconduct or, conduct unbecoming of a lawyer, misbehavior, it's a very aggressive and effective, but also terribly wrong way to silence your opponents, right? If they say something you disagree with, you say, well, what you've engaged in is misconduct. You violated the code of ethics because you haven't, paid lip service to our woke notions and equity, diversity, inclusion. Anyway, that's a side tangent. So she gets this anonymous complaint. She has no opportunity to respond to the complaint or to know who filed the complaint. And the penalty is imposed immediately. There's no process here whatsoever. Like, there's a complaint filed against you. You have an opportunity to respond. Then there's going to be a decision made. And then maybe potentially you get kicked off of the parent council you're elected to. No, she's informed by letter. She's not to attend the next public school board meeting. And so the Justice Centre has provided lawyers to Catherine Cronus. We've sent a demand letter to the school board, which is one of the most woke in the province, I'm told. And so far, they are not budging. So, likely this is going to translate into a court action being filed against the school board, where they're going to use tax dollars to to pay lawyers to defend their censorship efforts.
This is the video. This is the impugned video. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just
Looks like
play this
it,
out and
yeah.
watch this.
Hi, I'm Catherine Cronus, and I just wanted to say, as a parent member of the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, I would like to emphasize that Principal does not speak on my behalf with regards to the land acknowledgement. In my view, the board's imposition of a land acknowledgement during our school council meetings undermines the democratic process and constitutes a form of compelled speech, which I believe contravenes the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There is no school board policy mandating its inclusion. In my opinion, the sentiments implied by the land acknowledgement are political in nature, highly controversial, and therefore divisive and inappropriate within a government institution. And I respectfully request that my objection be noted in the minutes of this meeting.
That's the extent of the heresy. John, you could leave your camera open when I play the videos.
Okay.
So that is first of all, it's amazing. That was the extent of her heresy. It's a legitimate point, is that it is divisive, and lo and behold, it led to exactly what it was intended to do, which is an ideological purge of anybody who is not down with the woke BS. What legally speaking, people often ask this, like, what could be her rights and recourses? Is this I don't know that we have freedom of speech up in Canada. In theory, we should, but what would be any remedy for what happened to her?
Well, there's a case on point from the Supreme Court of Canada called Saguenay, and this case arose in the city of Saguenay, Quebec, and the mayor of Saguenay happened to be practicing Roman Catholic, and he had the habit or practice. He would open a council meeting with a Catholic prayer. I don't know if it's the Our Father or some other prayer, but he'd make the sign of the cross and pray for God's blessing on the meeting. And then, so there was some Quebec Citizens Group for Secularism Conseil pour la laïcité or something. I don't have the name offhand. They launched a court action and they said, you're imposing prayer, therefore you're imposing religion. This violates the charter. The state should be neutral. And when you have the imposition of a prayer at a public meeting, it violates the state neutrality principle. They won at the Supreme Court of Canada, and the Supreme Court said, yes, the state is to be neutral, so you cannot have a Christian prayer, and presumably also not a Muslim or Jewish prayer. You can't say a prayer as part of the proceedings of the city council. Presumably the mayor, and I don't know if he did this or not, like he could be outside of the city hall and on a public sidewalk, and he could say prayer there, or maybe other elected council members wanted to join in. But once they're in the public proceedings, you can't have a Christian prayer. Similar principle was applied. There were court challenges to the practice. Wide throughout Canada, the kids, if you're my age, I'm turning 58 in August. I remember from through to grade 7, so throughout the 1970s, we would start the classroom with the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That would be, everybody would recite that prayer. That was brought to an end in part because there were parents, there were atheist parents and Jewish parents and Jehovah's Witness parents who, for various differing reasons, did not want their kids to be subjected to this. And there's court rulings saying, and the schools tried to say, okay, well, we'll let the children of the Jewish and atheist parents, they can be excused, and they're not forced to participate. Mm-hmm. And the court said, no, that's not good enough, because then you're kind of ostracized. You kind of get singled out that you're the Jewish kid or the atheist kid that's going to be, leaving the classroom and then coming back in. And so that puts those kids on the spot, makes them feel uncomfortable. So this was the reasoning. Now, you could agree or disagree with that, but that is the law. And in my view, the same principle applies. Here you've got a very political statement, the land acknowledgement. It implies that we're on stolen land. It implies that it was a huge mistake for all of the Asians and Africans and Europeans to come to Canada. It implies that the Aboriginals are somehow more special than all the other ethnic groups that reside in Canada. And so it is political. And to impose that as part of the entire meeting is substantively, that's the same thing as the mayor of Saguenay saying a Christian prayer at the beginning of a council meeting.
Well, it's interesting because you're going to have to draw the analogy or argue that they're going to distinguish it's not religion, it's policy. And so the argument's going to be, this is quasi-religious, if not ideological. It's not religion per se. It was some sort of ideological, not indoctrination, but ideological requirement that not everybody adhered to the same ideology, and then argue mutatis mutandis. I say good luck with it. It's interesting. Also, you say the solution which was shut down was, if you don't like it, leave. I know from experience with some friends who say, I don't want my kid participating in certain gender explorative classes, and they say, well, you can leave. It's like, you leave, you're putting a target on your back for repercussions, reprisals, hatred, and bullying for being a bigot, so-called. So for the time being, she's been dismissed, and there's been no remedy, but you're contemplating or in the process of taking legal action.
Yeah, and I anticipate that with the consent of Catherine Kronos, that a court action would be filed. I agree with you. This is not religious per se. I mean, it's not talking about a deity, and it's not asking God or a God for divine assistance, etc. But it's very ideological. The crazy thought occurs to me, if I could write out the mandatory statement at the beginning of every meeting, mine would sound very different. I might say something like, we all recognize that individual freedom is the highest priority, and we need to put restraints on government. And it's crucially important for governments at all levels to respect our freedoms of conscience, religion, expression, association, peaceful assembly. And the government that governs the least is the government that governs the best. Okay, that's ideological, right? Now I'm entitled to advocate for those views, right? But I think it would be not right if that was the mandatory statement that gets read out for every school board meeting, every city council, etc. Right? So we'll have to see what the
If it
what
were
the
up to
courts
me,
do about it.
my recitation at the beginning of every class: boys have penises, girls have vaginas. Let's see how long people tolerate that. It's and the funny, it was a joke in kindergarten cop, and now it's become a hate crime to say things like that. It's amazing. I don't know that many Americans heard of this story, or those that did thought it might have been some sort of parody or joke, but it's reality up in Canada.